Looks like we have hit Facebook, which is good. YouTube is looking good, and open.com.au/live is looking pretty good. I love it when a plan comes together.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know how your clocks are working down in Victoria, but according to my clocks up here in Sydney, it is 7 o'clock, which means for me that's about time to start drinking some gin. So I said a quick g'day to most of you as you came into the room on the Zoom chat, but g'day to everyone in there. G'day to the people coming in on the Facebook and YouTube, and welcome to a virtual evening with, which is a bit of a
just me.
a bit of a spin on a series of tastings we were doing fairly regularly, called an evening with various distilleries around Australia when they would come into the oak barrel room. Unfortunately, for reasons that are many and varied and quite well documented in the past 6 months and recent times, we can't get into Victoria, and Victoria can't get to us at the moment. So tonight is a virtual evening with Mel Mick Sheard from the Imbue Distillery down in Victoria. G'day, guys. How are you?
No, we're very, very good.
Thank you.
Our ring of fire.
Yeah. And a g'day to...
not going anywhere.
Yeah. G'day to Kirsten on the Facebook as well. Thank you for joining in there. So, look, this is... obviously, we're going to be talking about gin tonight quite a fair bit. And just to put a little bit in context, we've had the gins in store here from the start of the year, I think maybe end of last year. And it was always the plan is next time you're in town and, you know, we'll organise some sort of gin tasting and that sort of thing, never thinking that the world would stop turning. And so I think it sort of made a bit of a sense to go, okay, well, let's do this and we can revisit the physical event in the future. But if you've participating with us in the Zoom chat or wherever you are and you've got the gin packs, you'll know there's a fair bit of stuff to get through tonight. But I think every time we do these evenings with distilleries, I think it's probably a good idea to just sort of introduce yourselves and say, you know, why did you have this crazy idea to start a distillery and whose fault was it?
Definitely Mick's. There's no doubt about that.
Sorry.
He's kind of the guy that goes, hey, I think we could do that and we could do it really well. So fuck it, let's give it a shot. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Can we? Anyway, we get through that and then somehow here we are. But it's a lot of fun. Really came with a few years in the making, but no real lifelong plans to be distillers.
There are now.
Well, now there are. And we're definitely raising.
We're committed to that shit.
Our 6-year-old is all about the family business.
She actually asked if she can sell gin when she's old enough the other day, and I'm like, yes, that is so cool.
Well, I kind of explained the whole 18 not appropriate. Yeah, anyway, she didn't really get that part, but yeah. No. So look, very much part of it now, but it definitely wasn't what I saw myself doing. I've been a chef for a few years, and Mick's got a baking. Pastry background, and we kind of came from there and
made hooch like everyone else does.
Made homebrew, lots of pickles and fermentations and all those crazy wacky things you do at home, and then went, actually maybe we could really do this. So
yeah, we started making some hooch, and it was actually really good. And we didn't make much; it was just enough. It was essential oils with a little bit of stuff. And yeah, it was coming out really good, and then we thought, oh, okay, we could make a business out of this. And I've been looking at getting out of baking for quite a while.
He's having a food business and another bakery, so yeah, finding that angle, and it kind of found us. So, yeah, pretty pleased that here we are.
Yeah, beauty. You just broke up a little bit through that, but I think everyone got sort of the idea. Crazy idea, bit of backyard experimentation, which we cannot advise. Don't blow yourself up.
No, not at all.
Absolutely not. It's now fully legal.
Yeah, 100%. That's what we like to hear. And a g'day to Daniel on the Facebook as well, out in Dubbo. Which I'm slowly planning a return to, which would be very, very good fun. But so this is a relatively new thing for you guys. How long has your gin been on the market, like done and
Yeah.
at markets and online and that sort of thing? Is it,
So
how long is that?
almost 2 years for the suburban and the barrel aged, and everything else came, I don't know.
Last 18
The
months.
liqueurs last year, and Journey we launched this year. So last year, I don't know what year is it. What day is
2020.
it?
Probably-
Who knows?
Probably realistically, at the start of 2017, we were looking at getting into it seriously, and we were quite deeply into it. We'd got our labels designed, and we were playing around with recipes on some other people's distilleries, and it just kind of worked that way. It was very organic. But really, to your question, it was about 2 years ago that we
launched officially.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to ask of you guys. But what we do have in front of us, what started with 4 gin samples when we first advertised this, has expanded out to 6 gin samples. And so one thing for everyone who is playing at home, I will say very quickly, is that if we were doing this like we, had every intention to do in the physical tasting room, which is opposite me here at the Oak Barrel, you would have got 6 samples of gin and they would have been 15 mils a pour each. Now we've got 6 samples of gin and they're 100 mils a pour each. So doing very, very simple maths, and I'm not very good at maths, but we have quite a bit of gin on the table is where my maths leads me to tonight.
Don't drink it all at once, people.
Yeah. So as you're going through, and it's always the first ones that get the heavier pours. So just pour little bits as we go through tonight, because we are going to try all of these neat. We're going to talk about the spirit. But what it also gives you the chance to do is put the cap back on and come back to them tomorrow night, tomorrow morning, whatever you want to do, that sort of thing. So, please don't try and drink 600 mils worth of gin in this next hour, because you're going to have a bad time. And whether you do drink 600 mils of gin or not, please do not drive back from your lounge room to your bedroom tonight, because you'll almost certainly be over the limit. But it is 7:07, and so that officially means I'm 7 minutes behind where I should be in opening a bit of a gin. So according to my order, and if you're on the social media, I've posted in the Zoom chat, but we're going to start with the Journey gin tonight, which potentially is, quite fitting because we're talking about the start of your journey. So I'm going to pour a little bit of this, but do you guys want to take us through this, and then I guess a little bit about how you actually make your gin and what the process is?
So ironically, the Journey is actually the latest product that we've launched, but it kind of fits at the beginning, and that's really where the name came from. I swore black and blue that we would never do a dry gin, purely because there's so many fantastic dry gins out there, and I didn't think we had anything to add. But we felt that our range was lacking because the Suburban is quite bold in its flavours, and we wanted to have 2 different styles to offer people. So we're using apples that we grow. We live in a region where there's lots of beautiful apples. So we use local Pink Lady apples, and Muntries, which is a Indigenous cranberry. So that's our kind of take on the Aussie dry gin rather than a London style. So 40%. What would you like to add, Mick?
Makes fantastic martini. I can vouch for that right now, mate.
Yeah. It's an interesting question, and it's about this time of year again when I start to think about it quite heavily, because I get to spend all next week drinking gin as a judge for the Australian Gin Awards. But the idea of like classic dry gins, the ones we associate with the word London, and then contemporary gins, which is certainly suburban and things we'll get into. What was it about that contemporary, that very Australiana, modern type of gin that you sort of thought, I want to do that first before you thought about doing this one?
Look, it was just I think if we didn't have that concept, I don't know if we'd be here at all. Like our take on what we could offer the world of spirits was that story and that nostalgia and that that kind of quirky, cliched Australiana, but something that everyone can relate to. And I just don't know that if we had in our mind that we were starting with a dry gin, if we'd really be where we are on our journey. So look at, I mean, maybe it's a backwards way of doing it, but we do tend to do things like that, quite backwards and left of centre. So we're quite authentic in that to our morals in that way.
And own our bruises.
Yeah, we do. Look, it's been a massive learning curve from us. We're quite honest in saying that we had no real idea of what owning or running a distillery was about until we were way too far into it to back out. And that's part of it for us. So we're quite happy to admit that. And yeah, look, definitely probably wasn't the best idea to do the contemporary first. I think we closed some doors for people that weren't enjoying that flavour profile. But it definitely shows our point of difference as a brand. So it has worked in that sense.
And we did tweak the recipe about 12 months ago to something that we think is actually far superior
to the original
than what it originally was.
And mostly it's the balance. Mostly it's the balance of the botanicals. Haven't really changed the botanicals, but just how they are actually distributed through the recipe really has made it much
it's more balanced.
Yeah, nicer,
smoother.
And aftertaste. Anyway, we should talk about that next because we're talking about journey. So
I've got a couple of questions for that, but we will get onto that in a second. But I mean, this is essentially, probably the most honest and raw and transparent version of your gin. Everything we try tonight is then going to be flavors upon flavors and built upon that. So probably a good idea to your process of making gin. What base spirit are you using, and are you distilling botanicals separately and then blending back together, or throwing everything into a still? Or
everything in one pot all the way, and we're using a grape spirit. So initially, when we launched the Suburban and the Suburban Barrel Age, we were using a grain, and through just the experimentation with that and refinement, we found that our botanicals are quite volatile, and the grape spirit is much, it's more of a texture than a flavour, I find. It's a lot rounder and softer. So I think with the Journey being quite a simple flavour palette, the really juniper heavy, the bit of apple, and the Muntry is somewhere between with the citrus and the pine and that little bit of sweetness, it's just really round and soft from the grape spirit.
Yeah, I think... One of the best ways I've had it sort of explained to me is that when you're creating gin, you're painting a picture, and your botanicals are your paintbrushes, but your base spirit is your canvas. So you need that to be, and it often won't define what your gin is, but it will certainly add or subtract to the elements, which I think is quite interesting. So, yeah, which I don't know of too many distillers that have actually jumped off midstream on that one. So I think that's
it was a big decision for us.
And look, in absolute honesty, if you turn your bottles around, guys, it still says grain. Like we're
still running through the old labels.
And it's just one of those things. We've got lots of labels, they're printed, they don't come cheap, and it'd be awful to chuck them away. And we will update that as we can, and that's the nature of small business. And we're quite happy to be honest about that as our process.
Yeah. So, I mean, if anyone's got any sort of thoughts on this gin as well, throw it at me. And we sort of said just before we went live, we didn't sort of recommend any mixes for tonight. I know some people have probably got mixes and stuff at home, but there's too much going on in the gins for me when we try the meat to actually get bogged down in mixes. But if anyone does stumble across anything they're doing at home, please let us know. But look, this is what I would say for me is so versatile. You've got that freshness up front, but it's also got that citrus, that almost like creamy citrus note coming through on the nose. But the palate is, and particularly the end of palate to the finish start, is quite savoury as well. So I can certainly think in sort of my type of martini, which is where you get the jar of olives, open it and pour 200 mils of gin in and drink that this would go quite well.
Yeah. I actually love it as a G&T with a slice of apple, and at the end of the glass, your apple soaked up all that lovely gin and tonic
Booziness.
beautifulness, and then you get to eat your garnish and happy days. You've had your fruit as well. So
We when we first when we first got the recipe, and we were like, yeah, we think this is it. We single distillated it just to see what it was going to be like, if it was a variance and whether or not we'd get anything further out of it. And we actually went back to doing
the one shot
because we were extracting everything we wanted to out of it. But we make, which a lot of distillers don't do, we make very deep cuts in our spirit run, which costs us a lot of money, but we find we get a much better.
Yeah, and it comes down again to being quite weird and wonderful botanicals that have some strong flavors, and you run it too far, you extract too much, and it tastes like arse, quite honestly. So we just, that's where we call it. So.
Yeah, awesome. A couple of comments coming through. Kirsten on the Facebook is throwing some Cappy Dry at it, and I can certainly see how that would work. The Cappy Dry is quite a lean tonic. Bridie's all about the apples, and Veronica says mixers, no way. She's not touching that with anything. But I like that, and I think hands up, I am the worst cocktail maker in the world. I struggle making a gin and tonic sometimes. But sometimes the easiest way to play with these things at home is all these great flavors we get from gin are because of botanicals. It's not, a whiskey or a cognac or something where it's all esters that we're associating with things. The flavors are there, so you can sometimes move away from like a twist of orange or something like that and just throw another bit of fruit as a garnish or something else, something floral, which is quite cool. So I think what Bridie was sort of getting at there, the apple idea, maybe some people hadn't thought about using an apple as a garnish, but
I will put my hand up and say I have a personal grudge against gins that have no recommended serve or no botanicals on the bottle. So you'll notice that ours, look, on the little labels, they don't because it's just too bloody small, but all our 700ml bottles have a suggested serve because I personally like to use a garnish that is something that is distilled in the product. So anyway, that's my two bobs.
Yeah.
I agree. Stick the apple in.
Yeah. I have to admit, I'm such a bad cocktail maker that sometimes I find that daunting when it's like, oh shit, I have to actually cut an apple and like do this to it. Oh, this is too hard. I'll go for the one, the easy one. But that's just because I don't know what I'm doing. But that was the first gin, the journey. Now, the one we're going to get onto next is sort of the flagship of the range, or the one that people are probably most associate with you guys. And I mean, you mentioned apples, and you're from a part of the world that grows a fair bit of apples. Where exactly are you? Sort of north of Melbourne, not quite in New South Wales?
Yeah, so we're at the foothills of Yarra Valley, King Lake Ranges. So it's the Great Dividing Range actually starts right where we live. There's a massive.
There you go.
There you go. You didn't even
Mel's
know
learning something too. So this is Mick's hood. Mick grew up around here. I have been here for about 10 years. It still doesn't truly feel mine.
It's not,
so take it away and tell us about suburban, Mick.
Look, honestly, suburban, I grew up in Hurstbridge, and I'm going to bore you for about 30 seconds because that's about all I'm going to go on for, I grew up in Hurstbridge, and when I wasn't riding motorbikes, I was riding horses. When I wasn't riding horses, I was in the creek. We grew up on just under an acre in Hurstbridge, end of the train line. It was a lot of fun. Childhood was just awesome. There was apples growing everywhere. There was lemon trees growing everywhere. There was fennel growing in the creek that we used to buggerize around with.
The blackberries everywhere.
And my sister, one of the funny little stories is my sister and I were fighting one day, and we had this cubby house. She fell off the cubby house into the blackberry bush, and it was hilarious because my dad had to cut her out of the blackberry bush. And it was literally, so he threw the doormat down. So there was a big, thick straw doormat down. So she could cover herself with that as my dad kind of went in with the whip sniffer and and got her out of the blackberries. It was absolutely hilarious. As a kid, I got in so much trouble. But yeah.
It sounds quite messy.
Yeah, a little bit.
Just like Vic.
But fundamentally, I think if you grew up in the 80s or the early 90s and you had the backyard on the outer skirts of any major city, you had the lemon trees, you had the
Hills
Hoist, the nostalgia of fun things on the Sunday afternoons because nothing was fucking open. And that suburban resonates with me so deeply that I just couldn't do this without.
And that, I mean, whilst
ingraining
we call it suburban, it really is that suburban and that play on that real location of it. And we've tried to make, well, it's specific for you,
Yeah.
Mick, of where you grew up, but we do find that the nostalgia and imagery really gets people in from quite a range of areas. And nostalgia is quite important to us, I guess, that, evoking a memory.
And so even in suburban, we've got the blackberries, we've got the prickly pears, dandelion, wild fennel, sunflower seed, all the things that I used to mess around with. So I don't know where it is. Oh, there it is. Still got a big bottle there. Hang on.
How far can you reach?
There we go. Can't even see it. But there is, I'm actually going to reach forward a little bit further. If you can see that, there's a little picture of a dog, and that's our dog on that.
And there's the backyard cricketer's got a bulb of fennel in his hand, and we like the quirky and the comical in it.
The one thing I picked up from that, as well as berries going everywhere with colour when you fall into them, was I think what you said, Mel, about evoking a memory. And I think that's such important with everything in this spirit world, but gin, because the flavours are often quite, transparent and naked and evident, is that they can transport you back to places. Like if you're using a gin with, Californian fir pine trees, that's a flavour profile you're not probably going to get anywhere else in the world to hear. So, I mean, I haven't been to Hurstbridge.
You're not missing out.
So...
Oh, it's a very cute, sleepy little town.
I tend to go to the other end of Yarra Valley when I'm down there. But like for you guys, and you might be a little bit biased on this one, but is there any other gin in the world that tastes like Hurstbridge?
I don't think so, and I think that's what we're quite proud of with Suburban, and that's why we were so proud to launch it. It doesn't, to our knowledge, it doesn't taste like anything else on the market.
But more than that, I guess the nostalgia and evoking memory, that concept of storytelling is something that runs through all our products. Imbue means to instill with a passion or a story, and that's what we're trying to do. That's our point of difference in the Australian spirit world, is bringing that story and hopefully people are getting that through, obviously the graphics and the imagery as well as the flavours. That's definitely our aim.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, initial nose of this one, and I think the flavours were more, like individual flavours are more immediate in the journey. This one, you immediately think, oh, there's a bit going on here, and I can't quite put my finger on it just yet, but there's a bit going on there. Still that freshness and that citrus, but it's got more like almost a herbal sort of back end to it, just on the nose.
The fennel fronds give a real grassiness, and there's no real other way to describe it than grassy. And to be honest, it's not everyone's cup of tea, and that was part of the reason for having Journey in the range as well. Not everyone likes that aniseedy, grassy flavour, but we think it's really special. So.
One, and you touched on it just before that when we were talking about the grape spirit, that not all botanicals necessarily give flavour, but sometimes they give texture, or they bind other flavours together. What do daffodils do?
Oh, it's almost like a nuttiness, actually. Yeah, so dandelions, not daffodils.
Oh, sorry, daffodils. Dandelions.
So we use roasted dandelion root. We did try using fresh dandelion flowers, but no flavour was carrying through. But we did a lot of single distillations with the R&D for Suburban, because things like the blackberries, if we had it in the pot versus in the gin basket, so whether it was getting a vapour infusion, really had a different flavour.
It's very earthy.
Yeah, the dandelion's earthy, but the aroma of dandelion is like sweet corn, which is really unexpected. So we definitely find that since switching to the grape spirit, you get, particularly the balance of Suburban is better. So you actually taste kind of the blackberry, jammy fruit tones underneath, where that was kind of washed out with the grain base.
And 100%, this is honestly where we're trying to find dandelions that hadn't been pooed on or pissed on by a kangaroo, and
So,
it's really freaking hard.
So that's part of the reason for going with the roasted dandelion rouge as well. Yeah.
It's a lot more clean.
But all the prickly pears we forage or buy from local farms, and that's quite labour intensive. So as a whole, this is it's a really difficult recipe to balance. Every batch is quite small that we make of the suburban because it is so much more complex than the journey.
If we don't let it rest for 2 to 3 weeks, we actually it'll just luge, and we've had so many batches luge that we go, oh fuck. It is definitely, and the oils just need that 10 to 21 days just to balance out. And we can't cut it too much. It's a very sensitive gin. It is a very complex gin for us to make. If we take our finger off the pulse when we're distilling it, when we're doing suburban, we don't do anything else. That's it. You're pretty much watching the still the whole time.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a sort of quite a good insight into the glamour of the job of distilling, going around, as Bridie sort of points out, like searching for dandelions that don't have poo on them. Just the glamour, and spending your days. Hot summer and cold winter days in picking berries and things off that sort of stuff. But when you say on the suburban that you have to monitor it quite closely, like, is that in terms of what temperature the still's running at, or how long you're running it for? For people who aren't distillers, like, what exactly are you watching when your still's on making this gin?
So when we can't make more than about 50 bottles at a time. If we do, we end up stewing the botanicals. There's a lot. The prickly pears are very ripe, and you end up turning it quite jammy. The fennel,
so it's kind of a combination, really. Yeah. It's about its temperature, its time, and it's a lot of tasting, because you can, as soon as we've got the right amount of fennel out, the flavour changes. And you taste it, it's like, oh, yeah, time to turn it off. We're done. It takes on like a soapy, almost like artificial. It's hard to explain, but you know when it's done. So it is, a lot of tasting, watching the temperature and the time that it's running for.
It's a very good day, the day we do suburban. I don't drive home.
Terrible voice.
Sorry.
I mean, how hard is it, even a step before that, to get consistency in your botanicals then? Because presumably, when you're working with fresh fruit and, fresh, everything essentially, how hard is that to sort of balance that out particularly if you're only making 50 bottles at a time, presumably that's going to be a bit all over the place.
Absolutely.
I'm going to throw a figure out there. So we had over 1,000 litres of shit suburban that we've kind of produced over the last, couple of years. That it's just you just missed the mark on it, just that little bit, and we've got to go, okay, that's it, we've got to start again.
Yeah, it is hard. Look, when we get to the end of the spectrum and you're tasting the liqueurs, you'll see that they use raw honey, and the same way, the colour changes batch to batch depending on what honey. We don't try and hide that. We don't filter our products highly. So it's celebrating the seasonality of it. But there are times where you can't follow the recipe. If the fennel's been growing for a while and the bush is a lot bigger and it's a lot stronger in flavour, you have to make that call to say, right,
we're going to cut it down.
Yeah, this needs less fennel this batch because it's bloody strong today. So it's a lot of tweaking and
tasting the products before we distill them is a big part, and making sure. Even juniper, we buy that in. We buy organic juniper in, but it does vary a lot.
Yeah, the quality varies.
And we soak our juniper, and we have to make sure that we actually taste the juniper juice to work out how much we're going to add. And it's very close. Like, there is very, very small nuances that we monitor, but it is really, really important to make sure that we're getting that consistency in the product as much as we can. And seasonality and varieties, products from around the world, and as much as we can locally. It's crazy.
When it comes down to it, we're making small batches. We're doing it ourselves. It's an art. We just hope that we invoke the.
We might just be having a little bit of a connection issue there, but I think just you were saying small small batches, so you're going to get those variations because you won't have the average of making 1 million litres a year. Yeah, and I think Daniel
and you
points out.
couldn't with these botanicals.
We'd like to make Imbue.
Yeah. Daniel points out, or it says on the Facebook, that it sounds like more than an art than a science to make the suburban, even probably compared to some of the other things you make. But just on that, sort of a final thought, of there's certain, time, like months of the year, that suburban lends itself to being made because the local produce isn't seasonal. You don't need to rely on going to other regions or other countries, or
not so much suburban.
We freeze the prickly pears, so we've got a couple of big chest freezers, and we stock up on, because prickly pears have about a 2 to 3 month season, and the weather's been pretty screwed up this year actually, and we haven't got a heap of fruit, so it's a bit scary. So that, luckily, that lends itself to being frozen, but the fennel doesn't. So there are times where it's like, oh shit, have to find some new fennel spots because we go to our 3 or 4 usual haunts and there's none there. So
yeah, we have resorted. We've started growing at home as well. At the distillery, there's a little bit, and worst case scenario, we've got a farmer that we can.
So the bulbs from commercially grown fennel, we can use the fronds because they chop off most of those. The flavour's not as strong as the wild fennel, but at least it's something that we can save from going in the bin.
Yeah, we had to resort last year twice to using farmed fennel because there was actually nothing around, and that upset us a lot. But we had to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for people playing at home and for myself, 2 very different gins first up, but there's a DNA there. There's it's certainly a house style that's starting to emerge. That sort of creaminess and one thing that I often see with gins is those 3 bits: the aroma, the taste, and then the finish. And having them sometimes all the same or all different. And I tried a gin quite recently that was almost like a clunk new gin on the palate, clunk new gin on the finish. Whereas particularly on the suburban, it's quite different, but it flows very well. So I think well done on. I'm sure that took a fair little while to get that down pat because it's not easy to do. But well done in sort of getting that flow working quite well.
Thank you.
That means a lot.
Yeah, awesome. And a quick g'day to Brooke and Jared on the Facebook jumping in there as well. So should we move on now to something that's a little bit similar, sort of, not really.
Yeah.
But.
So honestly, the barrel-aged suburban was a way for us to launch 2 products without doing a whole heap more R&D on another product. So we've done a few different barrels. We started with port, and then we did a bourbon. And what you're tasting tonight is sherry, or a Pera, actually, Australian sherry barrels, which, to be honest, I think is the most, what's the word? Complementary to the botanicals of the suburban. Like the port barrel was very popular because it had that sweetness, but I think you couldn't taste anything else. Whereas this is just so different to what you've just tasted. I think it's got a lovely nuttiness that lends itself to being paired with cheese, and you get that dry finish from the sherry cask. So,
I do have this barrel right behind me here is actually my private stash of port barrel. It is 100 litres, I know, but you may
release it to the public at some stage.
Maybe.
So,
just for me.
Yeah. So is this suburban exactly as it is thrown into a barrel, or did you tweak?
100%. So we did look at doing a separate gin, but what we thought as we developed as a brand, we thought, you know what? People love to know what it would be like to be aged. It's no different to when you make whiskey versus an aged whiskey. I love the idea of having the same product.
But to be honest, like purely selfishly, as learning as new distillers and learning, it's been an amazing tool to see how different the same product is in one barrel and then another type of barrel and over time. So it's been a great tool for us because so many different characteristics from the different styles of barrels. So, yeah.
Yeah. A question from the Facebook that came in a little bit earlier. When you're looking for your barrels, if you are making whiskey or looking to make wine or whatever, you're looking for certain characteristics in your barrels. And obviously, if you do whiskey or port or a sherry, a pair barrel, they're going to be different flavour profiles. But as we all know, no two Apera barrels are ever exactly the same. So what sort of things are you looking for when you're looking for a barrel to put Suburban into?
It's been trial and error. So a lot of it was really important to us to keep to an Australian as possible, as local as possible. So
I'm just going to run off and grab something that I think is interesting. You talk about the barrels.
It was important for us we were using a French barrel, and you won't be able to see it in the shop, but it's just in front of me. There was a 10-year-old barrel that was a sherry barrel, beautiful product, but it was French. It was a Spanish sherry barrel. It's nice, but it didn't really dig what we wanted to, and we found the Australian has a lot more
colour,
a lot more depth, a lot more.
So I don't know how well this is going to come across, but these are two different barrel age, different batches, and the colours are ridiculously different.
So
in person, at least.
This was a Spanish sherry barrel, and this is an Australian Apera barrel.
I don't know what can be.
Yeah, you can't really see the difference.
Well, I can definitely see a difference in the colour there.
Flavour-wise,
fairly similar.
Very similar.
Yeah.
The lighter coloured one has a lot more dryness to it, but the profiles are very similar. The Australian sherry,
as in the way that the botanicals age is similar. So the spice really rounds from the Suburban, and you definitely get that nutty finish overall. Look, the I don't know what you said, but the port and the bourbon we did were little 20 litres. And then once we realised, hey, this sherry is really good, we were looking for 100-litre barrels to have that consistency as much as possible.
Yeah, we picked up a couple of Australian barrels to try it in. They were really, really good. And then we stepped it up and we bought 6 from SA Cooperage, and we're very happy with those. And the consistency of those. So we do the Solera method with our barrel. So we still actually use the Apera barrel and the Spanish sherry barrel, and we just kind of Solera through the whole process. So there's 3 barrels at the moment. We've got Suburban gin in, and we just pull a little bit out of each one each time. We top them up a little bit, and we're very, very happy with what we've got going on at the moment.
Yeah, that sort of answers the question I was next going to ask, was in terms of length of time and age. But I'm a big fan of the Solera system, and there might be some people who aren't particularly familiar with the Solera, big in winemaking, particularly fortified. But do you have a rough estimate of how long your gin spends in these barrels when you're sort of
between
topping
4
up?
and 5 months. So we've had some as high as 7 months if we haven't had the sales, because we just, we figure, why should we take it out?
But at the same time, if you can't taste the juniper, what's the point of doing a barrel-aged gin? So it's about achieving that balance. It's still very much a gin product, even though it's aged. We still want to taste that characteristic so that it's proudly sitting in a gin category.
When we first launched, we used 20-litre barrel, and honestly, it was in there for 6 weeks, and it was so strong. It was a 50-year-old port barrel, so it was found at the back of an old winery, and it was a beautiful barrel. So I bought it back in carry-on luggage from Tasmania, and I had to plead with Tascast to sell it to me, and they did. And I bought it back, and Mel had no idea that I'd spent $1,000 plus on the barrel. But
he just sent me a photo of them strapped into the back seat of the hire car, and I thought, oh my God.
What am I coming home to?
Were we seriously doing this? And yes, here we are. That was the distillery beginnings.
So that was my first. I've got a dirty little, my strange little addiction is for timber, oak. I've got so much. I would just fill the entire distillery with oak if I could. I love it.
You can see we're kind of sitting in our barrel room. It's really an entryway, but we are kind of filling it up fairly quickly. So
we've got about 10 barrels behind us, and then there's 8 barrels in front of us, and we've got a 350 litre and a 220, and then we've got
So yes, there's he's getting some whiskey down. If that was a question that's going to arise,
probably wasn't. But
a quick g'day as well on the Facebook to Nick and Ellie Ayres from the Curry Distillery.
Oh, hello.
Out west,
yeah.
who comment on, or Ali says at least, adore the wall behind you all. So
I think Ali and Nick may have helped. They visited us mid-wall construction one day. They might have glued a few
bricks on the wall at one point.
But a couple of comments about the gin, and I find, being, with sort of standing out the front of our gin selection here and seeing what a lot of people are asking for, there's still a little bit of people don't know what a barrel-aged gin is or what it's meant to be, and it can drive in so many different ways that it's quite interesting. But a couple of comments coming through here. Kirsten's a fan. She says barrel-aged is so nice and smells incredible too, and I think that's important. A comment on the Facebook there is to hold true to that gin. And a question in the Zoom chat here is, if we were going to use a mixer with this, Neil asks, what mixer would you use? Like, if you didn't want to drink this straight, what else can you do with this?
I love it as an old-fashioned. I think it just works so well. Particularly, I think the orange or tangelo or mandarin really brings out that caramel kind of flavor profile. But we've got quite a few local restaurants that serve it as their signature G&T, and I was really quite taken aback. But it actually goes quite nicely with tonic. You just get a real slight hint of the oak coming through, but there is a point of difference. Can you hear us, or are we gone?
Yeah, no, I got you. I think sometimes you're just slowing down a little bit. So while we hear the rest of the conversation, you're probably sitting there waiting for someone to say something. So.
But
we sorry about that, but we did get that. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting, and almost I think what that nuttiness you were talking about, that dryness on the finish as compared to the unbarrel aged version. I love sometimes that spritziness, that vibrancy that the barrel age can give. But a question from Facebook: have you ever over oaked a gin? Have you ever gone too far?
Definitely. Yeah.
My little puppy here.
Yeah. So occasionally we'll blend batches if we find that it's too strong and we've lost the character of the base spirit. I think it's quite easy to over oak barrel aged, and I think there's some barrel aged. Look, barrel aged doesn't seem to be very popular, as you said, Scotty, a kind of genre in Australia yet, and some you taste nothing and others you taste too much. So we do try to find a happy medium where the juniper is still prevalent.
The smoky, the oaky. I love that. For me, the barrel age, I'll sit there in a brandy balloon with ice and citrus zest, and I will just sit there and have half a bottle in a night. Not really. I just sit there. I absolutely love it. As a dirty martini, a hot toddy, and a Groni.
Yeah, hot toddy is beautiful. It works really well as a hot toddy.
Barrel age just works, and I'd love to think that the Australian market just kind of kicks onto it and goes, "Oh my God, that's fucking amazing! Where have you been my whole life?" But I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think the people that like barrel age will continue.
Look,
to like
I'm not really a dark spirit gal, so the barrel age and exploring the different flavors of barrel age has really helped me to move into those dark spirits and train my palate without being too overpowered. Like, if you give me a peat of whiskey, I'm out, but to work slowly towards it, that it's actually been quite helpful for me. So I see that as a tool for the market.
Yeah, I think it's you sort of hit the nail on the head there in terms of, from a drinker's point of view, when you see the word barrel-aged gin, if you haven't tried it, you often don't know what you're going to get, because, could be a sherry cask, could be a port cask, could be a bourbon cask, could be 2 weeks, could be 2 years. And those flavours, differ quite wildly. So I think it's an interesting, but I guess it's a case of, if you're out at a bar or at a store looking for something and you see barrel-aged, try and throw preconceptions aside before you actually know the details, because it can be quite wild. And
I think if you have the opportunity to taste them, do it, because there are so many varieties that are emerging in Australia. So.
Yeah, it's a funny one, but there is historical precedence of this as well during the the 1800s and sort of, the early to mid, when you had the Old Tom sort of underground, leading into the gin palace. Often they'd be stored in barrel ages. So there is historical precedence. It's not something that us crazy Australians have come up with, but
what do you mean? I thought we were at the forefront of gin.
Yeah.
Shit.
That's
Missed
right.
that trick.
At least we mean to do it. I don't think they meant to do it back then.
Yes.
Yes, very purposeful now.
But yeah. So I mean, what do you find, just before we move on to the next one? What is your reaction? Not so much when I'm going to assume and I do know there's a few people who are quite into their gins on this stream tonight, but say at the farmers markets, like you were saying before, people who may not have had a gin neat potentially ever, and then you throw the barrel. What's sort of the honest and naked reaction you get from those people trying it for the first time?
It's interesting because I find that the sherry isn't that divisive, whereas the bourbon barrel was, if you weren't a bourbon drinker, there was no way that you would, oh no, not for me kind of opinion. So I think the barrel age gets in those people that, they might be there for their partner that likes the white spirits and they're into the aged spirits, and you might bridge that gap. I
love it as an entry for whiskey drinkers.
Yeah.
I say, oh, look.
I don't like gin.
Gin, well, try this because it has the oaky, the smoky, and our suburban barrel age is it's big.
But I find that on the whole, like when you explain that we've got the two products that are the same and all the change is from the barrel, people kind of get where we're going with that, to see that real interest and development. Really? You don't add anything? No, we don't add anything. We don't take anything away. There's that beautiful alchemy, for lack of a better word. So, yeah, it's definitely wins a few points like that, I think.
Yeah, I think I love the Solera setup as well, because I think sometimes people have one gin and they try and do everything with that gin. Throw some pink food coloring at it, throw it in a barrel, do it at 58% instead of 45%. And it doesn't always work in everything, but with the Solera, you've got a lot of control. And a question from Bridie, who sent a message to the panelists in the Zoom chat: would be weird to consider this gin as a digestive. And I don't think you're too wrong. If you go find maybe some fresh orange bitters or something and throw up the bitterness, 100% this could be a digestive.
And on a similar but different note, have it with a cheese platter. The nuttiness is so great with a cheese platter.
Delicious.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on good things come from cheese.
Absolutely, cheese and gin.
And I think when we get into the final two, the word cheese platter might come up again somehow. But we just if I was a betting man, and sometimes I am, I might put $10 on that word coming up again later on in a little bit. But shall we move on to the next one that we've got? Talk about the First Fleet. I think we're moving to.
We are. So your beautiful pink-coloured one, which we always get. Is it a pink gin? No. So there's actually no juniper in this at all, guys. It's actually just a fruit liqueur.
Vodka base. Yeah,
like our intention was that all of our liqueurs would be gin liqueurs. But the prickly pear is just such a unique flavour that it actually added nothing having juniper in there. It really kind of muddied it, I guess. So we sort of embraced the whole point of this product is embracing the weird and wackiness that are prickly pears.
And us.
Yeah. And also that they're really like quite a bitch to process and to pick and to forage, and why make only one product when we could make two?
So the prickly pear, it is a very light sensitive product. So if you do ever buy a bottle, just keep it out of the light. It will go to a horrible brown colour in about 3 or 4 months. It doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen.
It won't affect the taste, but it will fade.
Yeah.
So we actually used the prickly pears in the suburban gin, and we were
the fruit and the skins in
the liqueur.
The liqueur. So it is. It's a beautiful product. It took us a long time to make it. It's got bay leaf, bitter orange, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the prickly pear. So it's peak season, so we harvest it anywhere from Geelong all the way up to the border, and we're seriously right on the Yarra, on the Murray where we're harvesting it. So we try and exhaust the season as long as we can. When you first start the
fruit of the cactus.
Yeah, the fruit of the cactus. It's very earthy when it first is on the fruit. It pretty much works its way all the way through the melons. So you've got rock melon, cantaloupe. When it first starts, it's nice.
So in I guess varying degrees of sweetness. So if you were to get a melon from the market and not put it in the fridge and just let it slowly ripen, the prickly pear kind of mimics that different earthy sweetness through the stages of different melons.
Yeah.
So we do put a teeny tiny bit of beetroot to keep that natural colour a bit more vibrant. But in its first stage...
You got it.
I was just about to ask whether that was in there.
The prickly pear on its own honestly already has that earthy funkiness to it. So we didn't find that it actually took anything away from its flavour
It didn't actually add anything. So when we've made batches without a tiny, and it's seriously, it is about 2% beetroot.
It just helps keep that beautiful, vibrant colour because the prickly pear is so light sensitive, and the beetroot just gives you that.
It keeps that natural colour. I
mean, obviously, we could have chosen to put preservative or something in it
or pink food colouring,
but we chose not to. So
yeah. So we're very much about the unfiltered, the natural. So all of our products we recommend it, except for the gins. Give them a bit of a shake. They're going to sediment. The elixir, the first fleet.
Particularly, I mean, the next two you'll see because the honey is raw, but even definitely with this one, it will separate and you will want to kind of give it a bit of a shake up.
It makes a really, really nice dry cocktail. We call it the prickly
We call it a prickly lady, so it's our take on the pink lady, and it uses the suburban and the first fleet and a bit of orange and lemon juice. Shake it up. It's a winner. Mick did a Oaks Day lunch not that long ago, last year, and he was on his own and he pumped out 100 of them, 150, and the ladies were at him, and I didn't want to know, but anyway.
But that's potentially one you can make at home with just a little bit of
Swiss lemon. And I think
100%.
you all got a recipe card for the prickly lady in your packs.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, I packed them, so you should have.
If it's fine, yell at me. But I'm going to quickly, for those who may not be familiar with the fruit, I just found an image of it. I hope this looks like similar to the ones that you've got.
I have a little fake one that I can go and grab if you like.
I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, that's perfect, Scotty.
Yeah, 100%, Scotty. That is what it is.
So we don't use the paddle at all. The paddles are edible. Used a lot in Mexican cuisine, but we literally are only kicking the fruit and using the fruit.
So just, going back to something we mentioned a little bit earlier, when you're trying to hand forage botanicals and that sort of thing.
This is a fucking drainer.
I was going to say, how does this one go?
It's a fucking drainer.
3 pairs of gloves.
Three pairs of gloves. We've got our own little prickly pear picking kit.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to do it. So we will go out.
I don't do it anymore. I will cut and peel them, but I will not pick them because we legitimately occasionally buy from an Italian guy who's got
7 acres.
7 acres of them. And one day he told us that he went to the eye and ear hospital because the wind was blowing the wrong way and he didn't have any eye protection on, and he ended up with the prickles in his eyes. And I went, no, thank you.
So what that means is that's my job now.
Absolutely.
So it's solely, quite often I'll go out and I've got a really, really good chef mate who's got some growing at the back of his place. We'll get about 100 kilos off him a year, and we literally forage as much as we can. We door knock and say, look, I know you've got that bush down the back. Can I grab it? And 9 out of 10 people go, yeah, grouse, grab it. So it is a very arduous process. Yeah. It is a dangerous process. It is a shit job. I will wear a long sleeve t-shirt and a shirt and generally a jacket, 2 or 3 pairs of gloves.
But you know what? That's the whole reason why we're making the 2 products out of it rather than just one.
Suburban is a pain in the ass.
And look,
picking prickly pears.
It's an amazing flavour, but if you can see what look like the little dots on the actual fruit, so the leaf of the cactus, the petal of the cactus has big spikes. The fruit, every spot is made up of thousands of little, they're called glochids. They're like splinters. Like pretty much if you get one of the little hairs in your arm.
You don't get one.
No, you don't get one. But it looks like an arm hair, but you can feel it and you can't see it and you can't get it out.
So I'm going to tell you a little story. So the very first time we thought, we've got this little crap shack in the country and we do this thing called road fruit. So road fruit is for us
road fruit pie.
Anything that is on the side of the road that nobody owns, we are going to forage the shit out of it. So anything from apples to oranges.
We had a quince tree that we had our eye on.
Yep.
By the time we got there, someone else had picked all the fucking quinces.
Jerks.
But there was a prickly pear next door and we thought, why not?
Why not?
But I'd never seen them in my life. Mick grew up with them, but I'd never.
I knew what they were. I'm like, yeah, I know how to handle these. Fucking jerk.
We didn't have any tools in the car. It was just
I grabbed
grab
a Safeway bag. I grabbed it. I was very careful. I picked them off the fruit. I'm like,
didn't tie the bag up. By the time we got home, they were all over the car.
Over the car seat, over us. It was absolute drone. But we made this beautiful cordial out of it.
And we fell in love with the flavour profile, stored it away, thought we'll do something with that one day. And it actually started as a cordial. We were making it as a cordial, but they ferment really quickly. So we were adding a small amount of alcohol to preserve it. And then it was like, hang on a minute, this could be a liqueur in its own right. So yeah.
I think that's another good insight into why I made the correct choice of being the person who just gets to talk about it and sell it and not have to make it. Same concept of going to a bar and sitting on the side where people make drinks for you instead of having to make drinks.
Absolutely, yeah.
I've made some pretty good.
Sometimes I wonder our choices.
You know what? I wouldn't regret a single one.
But yeah, so I think we haven't actually spoken too much about exactly the drink now that you've gone through all that hard work of actually making it. But I think that nose is so unique, and harping on about that point again of, these sort of drinks take you to a geographical place in the world, and sometimes a historical place if it's somewhere you grew up at or you had good memories there or that sort of thing. Obviously, it's a fruit liqueur and there's sweetness coming through. Where's that coming through, that sort of syrupy note?
So we do actually make a simple syrup for this product. We tried it as a dry liqueur, but it didn't work. It's no different to adding salt to a dish.
But I don't find it to be an overly sweet. I think the earthiness that comes through those beetroot notes mean that it's not a crazy sweet. And I think by adding that bay leaf and the bitter orange,
and orange juice.
Orange juice and lemon. If you add it into a G&T, you just get that slightly sweeter drink, or obviously then you can mix it in a whole heap of ways. I think just with soda water and lemon, it's really nice as a low alcohol, refreshing, because it brings out that melon flavour again, so you can get that real refreshing.
We were at a market the other day and a lady came up and she bought a couple of bottles and she was like, I absolutely love this. I love it.
I don't think she spoke like that.
No, she did. But a little bit like throaty. She was like, I love this. This is so good.
What did she do with it, Nick?
She mixed it with her cheap yellow Glen.
Oh, really? Well, there you go.
She absolutely loved it with her yellow Glen. And I'm like, what? I'm blessed.
As long as you're drinking it.
That's right.
Don't care how you drink it.
A couple of comments here. Ali and the team from Distillery are waiting for you guys to come up when we can cross borders again. So you can pick all the ones just down near the train tracks for them.
We're
actually hoping that they're going to pick them for us.
Stick them in the freezer.
But a comment here as well, because people who haven't grown up like you, Mick, with the prickly pear. Kirsten asked the question. She's getting like a note of like a sweet burny, almost like the top of a creme brulee type flavour from the first fleet. Is that, you think, coming from the prickly pear? Or is that something else that she's picking up there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I reckon it's the prickly pear. I mean, look, as it's hard to explain, but that melon, it's almost like a cooked melon flavor, if that makes sense. So it's got that
rich depth.
Yeah, like a stewed berry. I think the bitterness from the earthiness from the beetroot could be giving off that bitter flavour. Look, to be honest, it's not everyone's cup of tea. We've definitely had people that say, oh, it tastes like medicine. But other people say, oh, that's very nostalgic. I don't know what it reminds me of, but something I've had before. So, look, I like to tell people if you're expecting a raspberry liqueur, you may be disappointed. So be open-minded with its approach.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's quite a good point as well to make that. This is a little bit sweeter than the three gins we've had before, but you put this up against some like particularly traditional English gin liqueurs and fruit liqueurs and Italian French liqueurs, and that is incredibly dry in comparison.
Yeah.
And that was a very big decision for us. We didn't want to make, because the First Fleet is one of our latest additions. We do have the Elixir, which is very,
the next
very
two products
sweet.
are both made with honey, so both quite sweet.
Quite sweet. And it was very considered to make this quite a dry, cocktail-friendly.
Yeah. So, and it bridges that gap in the range of between the gins and the gin liqueurs really well, I think.
We think.
We think.
Comment here from Jay Ryan is red velvety, which I can see that. I can also, speaking of red, this potentially to be a liqueur you don't drink while you're wearing all white.
No.
It
won't come out.
No. I don't think Auntie Peggy could ever get that shit out.
Yeah. That's a word of warning to everyone. When you after you've had all six and you go back for a little bit more, put on your black jumper before you
yes.
100%.
But you did mention then the next two liqueurs, the honey-based one. So I think we're actually going to go with an elixir.
Yes.
So
first.
Do you want to tell you the story behind that originally?
You might have to do a time check with Scotty first, Nick.
It's the internet. We got all the time in the world.
All right. So this originally, Mel and I were sick on the couch. The little one was up sleeping in bed, and we were just not in a good state. We were both unwell. I cauterize everything. The minute I get sick, I'm like, fuck this shit. I'm going to drink whiskey. I'm going to drink vodka. I'm going to drink
anything,
whatever
shot
I can,
of anything and everything.
As high as I need, and I'm just going to cauterize the shit.
And I'm all about the lemon honey tea.
Boring.
Not anymore.
No. So one night, Mel goes, you know what? We're both very sore and sorry for ourselves.
Put a shot of whatever you've got in my lemon honey tea, will you?
And we actually did it, and it was just like, fuck me, that was
really good.
And this was quite early in the Imbue journey. And
so we actually we have our own bees. So the whole playing with honey and having all this raw honey to play with was because we had beehives.
Yeah. We had about 60 kilos of honey that year from one hive. So we had more hives post that, but
obviously we're a bit distracted with other stuff now. So
just saying,
you know, but yeah, the love of honey and supporting local apiarists came from having it ourselves, and just we bought a crappy old house in the country that we were trying to renovate. Found a beehive in the roof. Nick said to me, "Oh, I've always wanted to have bees. Could we keep them?" Like, oh, what the
really?
fuck? But okay. So we did that, and
sounds a bit like alcohol.
Couldn't waste all that beautiful honey.
No.
So, and to be honest, it was something that deceptively simple, but took us a really long time to replicate it because we were obviously sick and then wasted. Getting that level of lemon and honey right took months of really experimenting. So you get all honey on the nose, but the kind of surprise is that real citrus you get when you taste it.
And we highly recommend you put this over ice and just let it sit for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, let that ice break it down a tiny bit. The
tartness from the lemon drops off. You really start to taste the gin botanicals. So we actually make a really strong, it's got twice the amount of botanicals that crazy London dry style gin. And it's different from anything else that we use. And then we sweeten it with a natural.
Yeah, just keep talking. We'll just be like,
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually a pretty good impersonation there of yourselves.
So we're using our own honey. We ran out really, really fast. In the first couple of months we launched this product, we were
because you find the people that say, "Oh, I don't like gin," they try Elixir and they go, "Oh, maybe."
Fuck me, that is really
Yeah.
shit hot. So
Yeah.
add it to champagne, add it over ice, add it to soda water. When you're not feeling well, make a hot toddy out of
Toddy.
it.
A hot toddy with the barrel aged and the Elixir is
Bang.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very universal product. I absolutely love the Elixir and on so many levels,
Yeah.
but you do need to shake it. If you have a look at the bottom of your bottles, if you do have a bottle, there will be
Oh,
vanilla.
grab the one next to you.
Sorry, yeah. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. There's
I did have an email one day
Vanilla
after a
beans.
market. Why is there all these black spots in my Elixir? Is it safe to drink? Like, yeah,
Yes.
it's real vanilla bean. It's totally fantastically safe.
So we did try many methods of extracting the to stabilize the product, but we gave up. We like, you know what? This is
Let's
a really good
embrace
product. Let's
The
embrace
fact that it
what
separates, that we're not using a binder,
There's no citric acids. There's no
and it's real
anything.
lemon, real like, we
Freshly
hand juice it.
squeezed.
There's sometimes going to be pit in it. I think we normally get all the seeds out, but like it's real.
And it does seasonally change a little bit. We do use as much of our own honey as possible, but we
Buy from other
and we do
local.
buy from local aperists, and we know them all, and we know their stories, and we know everything about them. So it's really important for us with this product. We don't heat treat the honey.
Yeah.
It's a very
So you'll definitely see colour variations between batches depending on.
very small
Oh,
nuances.
look, I mean, because the next product uses honey as well. We kind of go for two different flavour profiles. The Elixir uses a lighter sort of,
yellow box, grey box.
yeah,
honey.
or like a meadow flower
Yeah.
kind of honey, but it is going to vary.
I'm a bit of a citrus fiend. I've got a real soft spot for citrus, and just that sort of immediately on the palate, that rush through of citrus is. I'm a bit of a sucker for this. I quite enjoy.
But see,
Yes.
if you just based on aroma, you don't get it. It's that real surprise. You really only get the honey on your nose.
Yeah, 100%, which is quite fascinating. And I mean, I think that this is sort of a little bit of an under-tapped market, because what ABV we're looking at about 22,
22%.
Yeah.
20 for the last one. What was the wrong thing?
23
And 35 for
So
the seasons.
we're going to tell you a dirty little secret here. So when we first started, I'm getting closer and closer to the camera.
Yeah.
So, it's actually easier because it's a barrel I'm leaning on. But we started that at 40%, and we're like, "Fuck me, this is
It
absolutely."
was so
we're-
good,
we're
but we
really
couldn't work
happy.
out why we were getting
We're
so wasted.
smashed. And I was like, "Fuck me, I can't drive to work."
You should
Anyway,
have drink Elixir in the morning, is the
No,
moral
no,
of the
that's the moral of the
story.
story. but we realized that this is a product that realistically is going to get mixed, and to keep it at 40% is a bit of an untapped market. So we
Yeah.
thought if we drop the percentage, it becomes like a boozy
Old
lemonade.
Yeah, mix it with soda water and you've got that old-fashioned lemonade kind of flavour, which is quite low in alcohol then, and suits a bit of a wider range of drinkers. In champagne as well, it's really lovely. So yeah, just I quite like that we have that range of percentages to cater for different tastes.
But at 40%, oh, Jesus.
It didn't taste any stronger though.
No,
I've
I've still got one bottle upstairs, which I didn't sacrifice to anything. And it's just every now and then I'm like, oh, this shit's good.
I think it's quite a thing. Like particularly during the summer months, I think there's a real, want to sit on a balcony or sit in the park in the backyard, have a few beers across a long period. And there's not really all that much in the spirits world that you can do that with, that sort of sessionable thing that you're not going to fall over after, an hour into it if you're knocking back 40% gin every, 3 seconds. But this is sort of something that you can do that with, with ice, break it down a little bit and just let it sit and let it sit. And I don't think necessarily we have that drinking habit in Australia of that sort of all day afternoon, just sip on a spirit sort of thing. But this sort of stuff's perfect
we
for
can't
it.
change that, obviously.
Yeah. Kirsten Kane in the Facebook chat doesn't agree with me because she likes mixing it with whiskey. So just to bring that ABV right back up again, which I can get behind, I think. I've got no issues with that.
Yeah, it does make a pretty good hot toddy. I prefer it with the barrel-aged gin to the whiskey, but each their own.
Yeah. Couple of comments. Are you still selling that 40, what's left of that 40% bottle?
No. No, that's mine.
Distiller's privilege.
Distiller's privilege, 100%. There's I think we've got 3 bottles left upstairs, and that is all mine.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
So this one and these last 2, they are gin liqueurs.
Yeah,
The first thing was a fruit liqueur because it was coming from just a vodka base instead of a gin base. What was it about this one that made you think, okay, then the gin can still work? Was it like that freshness or the other botanicals working with it, or?
I actually think that they're more textural. So it sounds silly to say that they're not as sweet, but I think honey is a different kind of sweetness to sugar. And I think by having the spices, you actually get a much larger carry through, and there's a lot more texture than it being just a straight sweet fruit liqueur. So that's sort of something that look, it's a bit of an untapped market again in Australia. The UK has a heap of gin liqueurs, but that was something that we found that just, really having that juniper and that spice underpinning it really gives you a lot more texture.
And we have played around many, many times. There was a couple of 100 litres of R&D that went behind the elixir, and it was really, when we finally came across the right recipe, we're like, that's it. We just
initially it never had vanilla in it, but we found the vanilla really rounded it out. So it was that bridge between the sweet honey and your really harsh lemon. The vanilla was that rounding kind of character.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think, again, I'm going to harp on about citrus because that's where my heart lies. But I think sometimes having that freshness in those botanicals can help balance citrus a little bit to avoid being over tart, which, it certainly doesn't show it here as well, which I think is very, very...
and I'll let you in on the other secret ingredient since we may as well. It actually has lemon thyme in it as well.
Okay.
Which I don't like to promote too much because you've got to have something up your sleeve, but I think that helps in terms of keeping that sweetness at bay a little bit too.
Yeah, good. Well, that was your last secret now on the internet forever for everyone to...
Pretty much.
They get, what are we up to, 72 minutes into the live chat, any other distiller can find out the secret ingredient there. But, I think it was Mick there who mentioned that or it might have been yourself, that in the UK there's lots of these gin liqueurs. There's quite a big market there. But that's like the home of sloe gin as well, and it's sitting in front of a fire for 11 months of the year because it's too cold to go out, and having these big, sweet, sickly, cloying liqueurs because they help warm, where, and I think people assume that, but neither of the first two have had anything like that. These are summer in front of the Barbie sort of 35-degree days with ice type thing, and it's actually
that as well. They're quite, it is winter and it's cold and you're feeling a bit poor. It is quite a nice thing for your throat, and we'd love to say it's medicinal, but we can never get away with that. But honey and lemon is really good for you. So
and juniper and
there's a lot of natural additives. Anyway.
If Plato said, not Plato, it was Pliny the Elder that said juniper was a good thing, and I'm happy to go with his recommendations 2,000 years later. Shall we move on to then the second, I guess, in the duet of these honey-infused gin liqueurs to the All Seasons.
The All Seasons.
Which there's a bit of a colour tinge in the pack that we've sort of got here, and but not a they certainly carry the same hue. They're in the same colour board.
Yeah.
I guess first and foremost, why two?
So the All Seasons really started when I was a lot younger. I used to drink a lot of Drambuie. I felt very sophisticated when I drank Drambuie.
But you didn't like the price tag.
I didn't like the price tag. But as owning a distillery, it gives you a lot of autonomy to be able to do what the fuck you want. So
you make what you want to drink,
you make
ultimately.
what you want to drink. And I originally said to Mel, I'm going to make this myself. I don't know how to do it, but this is really important to me. And we started playing around with a base spirit, and then we started playing around with barrels, same as everything else. And then Mel's like, well, we need to make sure the honey's right. We need to make sure.
I think I'm the one that said it
flavors-
needs to be a gin, like it's
Yeah.
like rather than it being that whiskey liqueur, let's do it as a barrel aged gin liqueur, and that
So,
works. That's
yeah.
worked really well.
As a
So,
Drambuie. So Drambuie is a honey whiskey barrel aged liqueur.
Yeah.
And I think, if you compare one for one, we've knocked it out of the park. Drambuie as a product is fantastic, all seasons. If you compare them,
again, and we have done a few comparisons because
quite a few barrels worth.
we would like to we really do believe that this is a great product,
Mm.
and I think again it's that the gin base, it's that juniper, coriander, cinnamon, star anise
Very considered
underpinning,
underpinning.
which then gives you so much more texture, whereas the Drambuie, maybe it's full of flavor up front, but then it falls quite flat.
Mm.
Whereas I feel like that there's a texture that carries on your palate with the gin underpinning of it. So
it's barrel aged spiced gin. It's a very crazy spicy gin, and we age it
yeah,
in red wine. We do a Solera method with the all seasons as well. So it's a red wine barrel, and it's also a sherry barrel, and we add stringy bark honey, which is if anyone's ever seen stringy bark honey,
it's really dark.
and it's very sticky and thick, and it's
Almost got a smokiness to it.
It's a beautiful, absolutely beautiful honey, and we add that with star anise and cinnamon.
Yeah. What is the term? And this is a completely off the cuff question that I just sort of thought of then. Obviously, I work in spirits, and a lot of the people here watching are very spirits lovers. But I know there's spirit wankers, which I consider myself to be, and then you've got people who chase down coffee. Yeah, coffee.
Spirit wanker.
Yeah,
I thought I made up the term gin liqueur. I guess we don't come from. This is not our background, so we come in with fresh eyes, and it gives a bit of maybe it's a bit of cockiness. Hey, this is something new and different we're doing. Actually, it's not, but there's just not that many people in Australia doing it. But
So we make a really.
hang on, we didn't let.
Sorry, go.
Yeah. No, so I was just going to ask, there's people that hunt down single estate coffee and that sort of stuff. What is the honey equivalent for that? Is there a term for
Manuka?
No, it's not Manuka.
I'm kidding.
There is.
Maybe it's the cult of Manuka, like Manuka-ists or something like that. They call themselves.
To call your honey one specific flavor, one specific flower, the hives, I think I'm talking in slow, the plants that are flowering. So if you're making orange blossom honey, you will keep moving your hives to the orange groves as they blossom. But you can never say it is only made up of pollen from orange blossoms, because bees forage, give me the number, Mick, how far?
Up to 5 kilometers per bee. So if you can imagine this little fucking bee, which is tiny, that thing will travel up to 5 kilometers to bring back a quarter of its weight in honey. It's absolutely obscene to think about it. It's we go to work and we bust our ass for a couple $100 a day, but a poor little bee will never ever get paid, never get a holiday. They work 365 days a year until they die.
So
poor little shit.
We've divided into the elixir uses a lighter, more flowery flavour profile of honey, and for the all seasons we use a darker, smokier, richer variety. They will change depending on what's in season and what we can get our hands on, but that's how we kind of source our honey, really. Yeah. And it's all Victorian and all raw.
It's all raw, and we use our own honey as much as possible, and some friends of ours in the elixir, but we have to 100%. We do not have stringy bark honey. We don't have
the red gum, ironbark, any of the dark, smokier flavours we have to source.
We've got a really, really good friend down in Mornington, and he supplies us with what we need throughout the year, and he's absolutely fantastic. His honey is very beautiful, and I know it sounds very fluffy to say that, but he's all about honey. His whole life revolves around honey, and it's for us it's important to support as many people who are passionate about their,
And whether that's buying prickly pears from them or lemons or, you know, picking the fennel from their garden, we don't really care. It's the point is it's as many other small producers and other small businesses
as possible.
that are around us, we try and involve into our business and support as well.
That's it. Tony out in Melbourne, he grows he's got 7 acres of prickly pears. We absolutely, every year we love going out to see him, and we have a bit of a chuckle with him. He's grouse. He invites us to his little
he loves it because you know what? He's got his little I think it's his grandpa's old still, you know, and he gets it from that being of a culture where a lot of alcohol is made at home. He thinks it's fantastic what we're doing with it. So it gives us the warm and fuzzies, and we're getting really off track.
sorry.
Yeah, but I think there's definitely scope to do just like an hour and a half just on honey. I think this is quite.
Yeah.
I don't have honey virtual tasting. Surely that's been done, but if it hasn't, it needs to happen.
No, I reckon you could do it.
You know what? It's when I first became an apiarist, and Mel's the same. So when I first stood in front of a beehive and took off the lid of the hive, and there was 10,000 plus bees really pissed off, and they're flying around.
Crazy experience.
You've just got to stay so calm, but there's this amazing aura that comes over you, and
that sounds really wanky.
I know,
but
it sounds really wanky.
I think if you haven't experienced it, you don't get it.
You don't get it. It's such
they're very
a beautiful,
fascinating. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing, and that's why it's so important for us to be able to use honey in our products, because we do have our own hives, and we still harness those, and we love nature as much as possible. I sound like a twat now.
Yeah, you do.
That was amazing. We've done a lot of hours of virtual tastings and virtual streams in the past, like sort of 18 months, and that was some of the best quality, about a minute's worth of quality streaming content just there. I'm going to have to cut that one back. That was awesome to watch. And yeah, Ali on the Facebook comes up with the concept of single hive, which could be quite cool. You got single malt, you know, like single cask rums and that sort of stuff. Single hive honey gin liqueurs, I think.
It could be, but I think you would struggle with the quantity that you could actually produce from it.
I'm going to say...
It's like calling... Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. It's like saying it's organic. I mean, you can't control... you can't control where the bees forage. So the people that say their honey's organic, like... Well,
they're full of shit.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I love the concept, and I'd love to say, oh, you know, our honey is absolutely organic. Fuck off. You cannot control where a bee is going to fly within 5 kilometres. You know, 5 kilometres is a long distance. Yeah. I can't run 5 kilometres. I'd love to think I could, but it's not going to happen.
Too much gin.
Too much gin.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's there's definitely an hour and a half just talking about this. We'll speak after this. We'll make it happen. I think, and there's a lot of people.
I've done a few presentations on our bees for. I cook at my day job. I cook in aged care, and you know, when we've been short of speakers to present something for the day, I've taken in the frame of honey and done my PowerPoint. So I'll hook you up, Scotty. No drama.
Beauty. Now, about half an hour ago, I did make a bet with myself that a certain term might come up when we got to these last two. So I'm going to actually cash in and win my own bet, thanks to the shoe bridges. And I actually think there's a few of the people in the Zoom with one account are actually 2 people listening, and I think this might be one of them. What styles of cheese would you recommend to go with these last two? I've got a few thoughts, and I think potentially for this one, something a little bit harder with maybe like that sort of crystallization mineraliness that comes through. But what would you pick for cheeses to match these two?
Go the hard cheddar with the salt crystals. To be honest, I wouldn't put cheese with these two. No, I know. My pick for cheese is the barrel aged. So to me, these two are just a bit sweet for cheese. So I don't know. You go for it, Scotty. What do you reckon?
Maybe it's because every cheese plate I've ever had in my life has got like quince paste and biscuits and things on them as well. Yeah. So that idea of a cheese, I probably should say cheese/charcuterie board.
Yeah.
This is going for that. But I think, you know, those harder, more crumbly cheeses could work. Maybe something like an Edam for the elixir.
Yeah,
as well?
I think Anita, I made. So I like making everything.
Yeah, Mick's quite into making cheese as well.
I like making cheese.
And this is the
I get
part
more
where
quality
I'm
content.
embarrassed by my husband.
By my husband,
Yeah.
yes. So I love making cheese, and this is, I'll give anything a go, right? And I love making feta. I love making ricotta. I made a Gouda last year with the. What the fuck is that?
It's a quick poll. We don't need
Yeah,
to.
so that was, you weren't meant to see that. I was meant to put that up
Oh, sorry.
very
Okay.
quietly.
So
I can't choose one of my babies, Scotty, so
Yeah.
I'm not answering.
I made a Gouda the other last year with a friend of ours, and it was a lot of fun, but I love blue cheese. So what I did is I sacrificed the Gouda cheese and I added a bit of blue mold to it.
Oh, come on, be real.
Actually, I was
It was a lot of blue.
I was ravaging our blue cheese,
It was
and then I went and cut the
crazy.
Gouda as well, and I ended up infecting the Gouda with the blue. But I really love the all seasons
All
with
seasons with the blue.
with the blue. Works really, really well. And I think a hard cheese, a cheddar with the all seasons.
Here's
works
one
well.
for you that I actually haven't tried yet, but I was told by somebody in a market that First Fleet drizzled over halloumi is amazing.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
Yeah, I can see that too.
And we have a local restaurant. I'm going to drop Gio in this.
Yeah.
Gio he owns this local little bar, and he's awesome little bar.
Spanish tapas
stuff, and he uses the First Fleet to cure his salmon, and it is absolutely to die for. Super good.
Yeah. Couple of comments coming through. Marco says truffled cheese, maybe a wine cheddar or a light blue cheese, maybe Roaring 40s blue. And I think, and Nick as well on the Facebook has said that he's going to start drinking a lot more suburban gin because he knows how much you love picking prickly pears. So just to...
Thanks, Nick.
Anything that we can do as a gin community together to get you out in those fields playing with cacti, I reckon is
wonderful.
Yeah.
You know what? There's something quite romantic, and as much as it is a pain in the ass, there's something quite romantic about in a field on a hot, March day to be picking prickly pears and come back.
The real reason, though, that
it's a lot of fun.
A lot of people don't use the prickly pears, and we found in our area where they really grow wild, they were rotting and falling off the trees. There's definitely certain cultures that it's a real part of their background. Maltese, Sicilian, Italian, they use them quite a lot. They're familiar with the flavour, but otherwise they're on the ground, they're rotting, and we hated seeing that. And that was a big impetus in using them in the first place. So.
And the same with the fennel as well. Fennel, there's not a single creek anywhere in Victoria that would not have a fennel plant growing within a few hundred metres. Not that we forage our fennel from creeks, just saying, but it is grown absolutely everywhere. And a lot of people see it. They don't know what it is and they don't understand it. We have some really, really good friends, Kat and Jared, and we were absolutely pissed as newts one night, and it was hilarious.
Are you sure that was Kathleen and Jared?
Oh no, it's actually
I don't think they drink.
Kat and Jared.
Victorian
Kat and Jared, yeah.
So these are Kiwis. And
look, it comes back to us being chefs and pastry chefs, and instead of getting takeaway when we were drunk, the boys went down to the creek and picked some fennel and
wild fennel and
dandelion, and we knocked up a pastado, and the fennel went in it, and I don't know, 20 minutes later, there was this incredible dinner that I can't believe we remember it the next day sort of thing. But
yeah, and it's just like one of those things is that the food industry and the alcohol industry, it is so broad and you can do so much with it. And I think people need to stop going, it is what it is.
Well,
you need to kind of look
I think
beyond.
it is. It's beyond. Food and wine pairing has had its day. We've moved into beer and wine. We're moving into spirits and food. That's what it is now. Spirits are having a terroir. I can't say it. Whatever. Had too much gin. In the same way that wine does, and that's where it is. And we're very passionate about cooking with our gins and recipes and food, that crossover. We love the crossover. That's our background. And I really think I'm talking too much.
I did, for those who are playing on Zoom, I put up a poll just of your favourite out of the 6 we've had tonight. If you're on the Facebook or the YouTube, feel free to answer that question as well. But yeah, a couple more comments here. In terms of Johnny Hitchens reckons the Elixir was his favourite, which is John Hitchens is a hard bolted on spirits lover. So you've I would have put again bet on one of the two, probably the third gin actually, the barrel aged I thought he would have gone for. I reckon Middle Eastern food with the First Fleet. I can see that as well.
Yeah. It's got that similar pomegranate characteristic of that sweet and sour, really. It's sweet and savoury.
Dress a salad with it.
Yeah, like you would pomegranate molasses. It's perfect.
Juliana Payne, who has been a fierce supporter of our virtual streams, is loving the First Fleet out of the sort of liqueurs at the end. Perro loves the Journey. And on the Facebook, a secret has got out that I don't know if you wanted released to the public, but someone who may be called, start with an L and end with a Lee, was saying that, I just need to find it there, something about a marmalade mixing well, which has prompted a couple of questions of, sorry, marmalade, and where can I get that? So I'm going to echo, sorry, marmalade, and where can I get that?
Well, look, we don't like to waste anything, as I think we've made that obvious. So we use only the lemon juice for the elixir. We don't use the skins at all. So there's definitely been a whole heap of products that are in recipe development, little offshoot products. And yes, there might be some French 75 flavoured marmalade in the works.
And there might be some
preserved lemons. Be some gin preserved lemons as well. So keep your eye open. They will be coming soon.
Yeah, so we've actually done a barrel-aged preserved lemon, which is really, really nice. We're just tweaking the recipe a little bit with that. And that,
yeah, we'd love to have a whole. I'd love to have a whole range of offshoot kind of products that utilise everything, so that nothing gets wasted.
We've started working with. I started making candles, and you know what? I'm no good at making candles. I'm just saying.
Can you stop with that voice, please?
Sorry, no good at making candles.
So yeah, we're working with like the preserves and the pickles we're doing ourselves, and working with a couple of other local businesses to produce some other offshoot products
with our waste botanicals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
Beautiful.
We've been working with a local soap producer to utilise the soaps, a local candle, a small artisan making beautiful candles. So why the fuck not? You know, it's
pretty much. I mean, like, if everything can be gin flavoured, why wouldn't you go there?
100%. So I'm going to, I think everyone in the Zoom chat's had a poll. I've been looking at the Facebook, and I think it's pretty across the board. I think it's the first time that we've got a vote for pretty much for everything. It's got at least one vote across tonight. But I think Elixir by a nose with about 33% of the vote. Very good. Then sort of you've got All Seasons and Suburban coming in at an equal second. So I think Perro has sort of summed it up by saying that they were all great, such a great collection and really well put together. And I think that last bit is what I want to sort of point out, is that everything that we've tried tonight, we've gone, it's a gin tasting, but with a twist, right? You know, we're a long way from where we started, an hour and a half ago in terms of flavour profile. No, but I think that's about like all these very unique products and, things that in some cases can't be recreated anywhere else in the world, but everything is being put well together. There's no sharp edges. There's no aggressiveness in any of them. They're all very good products. So congratulations on that and well done for us. A real journey coming through there as well.
That's why we named it The Journey. Sorry.
There you go.
Sorry, Scott.
No, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Unfortunately, we couldn't do this virtually, but I do have some friends who are stuck on the other side of the border at the moment. So you might be getting some knocks on doors asking for various things in the near future. From various spies of mine. But look, guys, thank you so much for jumping on.
Really great time.
Yeah, a couple of last comments coming through. Kirsten Kane on the Facebook, can't wait to get your dirty mitts on some of that marmalade. So yeah, you better Yeah. Get to work on that one, I think, is the underlying current on there.
Ali for the boiler.
Yeah, I'll put everyone in touch. Don't worry. But look,
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, the energy and the love of the spirits and the love of what you do and the passion is evident with everything you say and everything that comes through. And I think that's really important to what ends up in our glass. For those who do have the packs, again, don't drink them all tonight. It's 600 mils of good times. But spread that 600 mils out over a few nights. But I'm going back to the First Fleet to finish off with. So I'm going to kill the social media streams. We can, sit around and what we like to call the after party in the Zoom chat if anyone's got any questions. But very, very finally, before I let you guys go, I want to do a very big shout out to the team at Nip of Courage, to Kathleen and Leanne and Phoebe and the whole team there that, what's the right word? Ruthless and relentless champions of Australian spirits, I should say.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a company I've been working with for as long as I've been at the Oak Barrel and into the future. And it's they were the ones that put this all together tonight and made it happen and put us in touch. So I want to raise a glass to them and see you tomorrow night to anyone who's joining us with Peter Bignell down in Tasmania, which should be a good fun. But guys, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. It's been
and I will come and visit as soon as I can.
Sounds great.
I will hold you to that.
Got a bed? Spare bed?
Yeah, we do.
It's not that comfy, but it'll do.
we got a big freaking couch. It's all good.